Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Grumpy Acres Farm Live. Tonight we're going to talk about the second part about our responsibilities under the Bill of Rights. If you missed the first video, a week and a half ago I did a video about oh no, X isn't playing. Anyway, I did a video where I detailed some of the basic responsibilities that we have as citizens under the Bill of Rights. And if we follow these responsibilities, then everything just seems to work a little bit better. Well, the second part of it is talking about how our responsibilities change, or maybe what responsibilities are added to our plate. Before we go on, if there's anybody in the chat, go ahead and give me a 5x5. Let me know you're there. Let's pull up the Grumpy Acres feed and see if there's actually anybody out there. It was kind of not a good night to do this because the NFL's got live games tonight, and probably a lot of people doing that. And then there are people watching what is it, Southern Billy and Wanda, or Danny and Wanda, I'm sorry. Oh, let's see here. Oh, only one person. That person's me. Okay, look. If you catch this in the replay, think about subscribing if you like this kind of content. We'd really like to have you come join our channel here. So, all right, let's get on with our responsibilities under the Bill of Rights under tyranny. Okay, so when we're faced with the tyrannical government, the responsibilities associated with the individual rights shift from passive compliance and cooperation with the system to active defense and preservation of those rights. Basically, all that's saying is, as citizens, we have a responsibility to actively preserve our rights, lose it or use it, or use it or lose it, I should say. This perspective aligns with the philosophical principles of natural rights and social contract, which asserts that the legitimacy of a government stems from its moral obligation to protect individual freedoms. That's what the Bill of Rights did. It laid those out. Bill of Rights doesn't protect anything, but it laid it out and described it to everybody so that they would know what freedoms they had. When that obligation is violated, individuals may bear higher responsibility to resist oppression and restore justice. All right, now let me pull up, present, share screen, window, share. There you go. All right, our responsibilities under tyranny. Oh, bear with me, guys. Let me get some windows I got to get squared away. All right, the general principles of resistance to tyranny. This is probably the most important part, because it lays the foundation of why we're doing what we're doing, which as I say over and over again, is primary to our freedoms and liberties. Is we have to understand what we believe in and why we are doing what we are doing. We just don't want to do something because somebody tells us to. All right, we don't want to follow the crowd. Okay. 4 general principles of the resistance to tyranny. Number 1, education and awareness. Educating oneself and others about the nature of tyranny and the principles of liberty. Number 2, civil disobedience. Peacefully defying unjust laws and highlight their immorality. Collective action. Building communities that can resist oppression and provide mutual support. And finally, the fourth one, defense of liberty, enjoying self-defense or active resistance. And I'm sorry, we may enjoy it. Employing self-defense or active resistance when all other means have failed, while adhering to ethical principles. All right, let's go through those one by one. The first one, education and awareness. That's what we're doing here. This is why we share our experiences. We want to educate people so that they understand what's going on around them. And part of education and awareness is becoming active, because you can't educate somebody if you don't know what's going on yourself. But you have to become active in local politics and the communities. And that's the number three, collective action, building communities. This is why we talk about what we talk about, and we bring you this type of information. And Tag from Life Done Free, Hacks from the Homesteader, the several other channels in our circle, we're all talking about building community. This is why we go to the festival, so we can build community. Oh, doesn't look like there's anybody in here yet. That's okay, guys. I'll just do this, and you guys can enjoy it in the replay. Civil disobedience, peacefully defying unjust laws. Civil disobedience is key to moving forward against tyranny. Is you have to start someplace, and you start with civil disobedience. The one thing about civil disobedience. Oh, Skanes is here. Well, at least I got one person that showed up. How you doing, Skanes? Civil disobedience. The key to civil disobedience is it only works against a government that has some moral and ethics. Case in point, Mahatma Gandhi did civil disobedience in a peaceful manner against the British Empire in India. Had he tried that in Nazi Germany, he would have been sent straight to a concentration camp. So civil disobedience is where we start. And once that hand is played by the people, then it falls into the government's court into figuring out what they're going to do. And then how the government reacts is what decides what decides comes next. And that's defense of liberty. Employing self-defense and active resistance. One thing we say here constantly, we're not advocating violence. We do not advocate violence. We talk about the Second Amendment in this household. We are adherents of it. We think everybody has a right to own a gun, and quite frankly, we think everybody that is legally capable should own a gun. Even though we're not advocating violence, violence is always a recourse, and we don't automatically go to violence to fix things. All right, so it's an escalation, and eventually, if things come to a head, violence in the form of exercising the Second Amendment is what happens. All right, so let's go to the next one then. All right, now we're going to talk about the amendments. So remember, we talked about the responsibilities last week, and as I said at the beginning, just a little while ago, you've got these responsibilities under the Bill of Rights that are associated with each one of the rights. Just because you're under tyranny, that doesn't abrogate those rights. These responsibilities, or I'm sorry, doesn't abrogate those responsibilities. Just because we're under tyranny, these responsibilities that we're getting ready to talk to are added to what we have. All right. So let's talk about the First Amendment. As a refresher, First Amendment is freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition. All right. Once a tyrannical government starts cracking down on freedom of speech and the other things associated with the First Amendment, here are the responsibilities. Number one, we need to speak out. We need to be vocal against injustice and expose government overreach, even at our own personal risk. And And that's a key point. I'm glad that that one is the very first responsibility that pops up in this conversation, because even at personal risk is something that falls on each one of these responsibilities. Because if you're dealing with the tyrannical government, they're going to strike back. They may not do it immediately, but eventually, if they're threatened enough, they will strike back. And you have to be ready. You have to have the moral courage to stand up for what you believe in. And the very first thing you do is start to speak out. Next one, to assemble and petition as a means of resisting tyranny and galvanizing collective action. The truck drivers in Canada last year, they gathered resisting the tyranny of the Trudeau government, and it galvanized a lot of people. Unfortunately, the Trudeau government was more tyrannical than the fever of the truckers. But if you want to talk about it honestly, it started the downfall. It starting then led directly to his resigning as Prime Minister of Canada. Okay, the last one. To uphold freedom of thought and conscience, even if such freedoms are suppressed by the government. Perfect example. Here's a probably the best example of this. The Christian church in Soviet Russia. The Soviets actively went after Christians, and what happened was underground churches popped up and they held services, even at the risk of physical harm. There was a story that I read about a young lady that was part of an underground Christian church, and the church got raided and they beat her up, and they beat her really badly. And they took her to jail, and one of the guys that was part of the raid and had beaten her up was one of her jailers, and they abused her. They finally let her out. She went right back to doing what she was doing. The same guy caught her again and beat her again, threw her in jail, and tortured her in jail. This happened like 3 or 4 times over the course of several years. And finally, this guy looked at this young lady and said, "Why do you keep doing this?" And she said, "Because I believe in God and it's my faith." He actually ended up converting to Christianity because of her witness there. And she stood by what she believed in, and it converted somebody. All right. Let's go to the Second Amendment. Everybody loves talking about the Second Amendment, especially in the prepper sphere. All right. Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Okay, the responsibilities change from ethical gun ownership, safe storage, and all that, to the first one, to defend oneself, one's community, and the fundamental principles of liberty. Now, how does one defend one's community? One, self-defense is pretty dang self-explanatory. But how does one protect one's community or defends one's community? Well, there's a little word in the Second Amendment: militia. That's where militias come in. Militias are there to help the government whenever the government's working in an ethical and a fair manner. Once a government becomes tyrannical, it's people's responsibilities and rights to come together and take action if need be. Case in point, the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, after World War II. Veterans saw that the election process was corrupt, and they tried to fight against it in peaceful manner. The sheriff and his goons were extremely violent, and what happened was the veterans banded together. They went and raided a National Guard armory and took on the sheriff and his deputies, and ended up winning the day. It's a fascinating story. Go read about the Battle of Athens, Tennessee. It's very interesting. And I'm sorry, I didn't say hi to Joseph G and Tamara when you guys came in. I'm glad you guys made it. I know that I'm competing against some other very big names and some very, very big big ongoings there tonight. Okay, the next one. The next responsibility is to maintain responsible and ethical use of arms, ensuring they're employed only in defense of liberty and justice. Now, some people may question what this one refers to. Here's an example of how not to do it. Guatemala, right-wing death squads. They went out and they hunted down liberals and they murdered them, and it was murder. It wasn't anything aligned with the rights of the people or the good of the people. On the flip side of that, leftist Maoist revolutionaries have a very bad habit of killing people that disagree with them. So, that's not the responsible way to do it. We should always be looking, and it's hard. It's hard because when the other team is not playing by the rules and you decide to follow the rules, you handicap yourself. And we really have to be careful under tyrannical rule that we don't become the monster we're fighting. All right? That's paramount. We do not want to become the monster we are fighting. All right, let's go to the Third Amendment. All right, the Third Amendment is protection against quartering of soldiers. Now, in modern times, this really, violations of this one have been few and far between in modern times. It was much more prevalent whenever the Constitution, the Bill of Rights were written. But it's still out there. All right, excuse me. So the responsibility, if you remember correctly, the responsibility in the Third Amendment was to support the government in time of war. All right. First responsibility, to resist attempts by a tyrannical government to commandeer personal property or resources in service of oppressive goals. Now, I read that one. When I read that one, all I could think of was the Kelo case back east, where they used eminent domain and they were taking people's personal property away. I'm not quite sure it's the same thing, but in any event, these are the type of things that we should try to fight against, because the government, it starts with taxation is theft and it just grows from there. All right, I'll just leave it at that. The next one, to support efforts to maintain the sanctity of private spaces as a bulwark against authoritarian control. Now, this one is something that we should always be doing. I'm gonna see, there's a gray area. This one falls into a gray area, because this sounds like a responsibility that we should have all the time, right? But what if your government's not oppressive and authoritarian? There's no need for this. All right. So once it becomes authoritarian, this responsibility kicks in. All right. That's why it's on the list. And again, guys, if you got any questions or comments, please feel free to ask me. I will take time and discuss whatever it is you got a question about. Okay. The Fourth Amendment, protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. There's a lot of that going on. You guys ever hear of civil forfeiture as far in law enforcement? It's a real problem. All right. First responsibility that is added to our plate, to challenge unlawful searches and seizures as a means of preserving personal and collective rights. And that's a key phrase right there, preserving personal and collective rights. Collective rights do not disappear until personal rights start disappearing first. Okay, there will always be a canary in the coal mine of personal rights being abrogated before collective rights are taken away. All right. The next one, to protect private property and information against unwarranted government intrusion. Like I said, the civil forfeiture laws, they can take your stuff without a warrant just because they feel like it. Another one, Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is a huge violation of our rights. The government is out there without a warrant just sweeping up all our data and conglomerating it and making dossiers on everybody, every single person. I guarantee you, every single person in this chat and every single person has a record in the federal government that the federal government can go to and look at you and decide whether you're a friend or a foe. I guarantee it. It's out there. All right. So these are we need to actively protect private rights and information, or private property and information, in order to keep our rights to begin with. All right, let's go to the Fifth Amendment. Oh, there we go. All right, the Fifth Amendment, the right to due process and protection against self-incrimination. Why would anybody need to protect themselves against self-incrimination unless they were guilty? That is the argument that the oppressors and the tyrants use. All right. First responsibility, to resist self-incrimination in unjust legal proceedings and stand firm against coerced confessions. Remember at the beginning of this when we were talking about the First Amendment, and the very first thing it said was even at personal risk. This is lawfare 101. The J6 people, I guarantee you, have suffered this tyranny. Guarantee it. The next one, to demand due process for oneself and others, holding the government accountable to the rule of law. Now, I read this one, and again, thinking of the J6, I have not written my congressman. I have not said anything to anybody in power about this, and I really need to do that. I need to sit down, and I encourage every other person here to contact their congressman, contact their local politicians, and demand justice for these people, because there are people that have been charged with crimes from J6 that have been not even been charged with a crime in the last 4 years, 3 years, however long it's been. Haven't even been charged with a crime, and they're still sitting in jail. And not enough people are demanding due process for them. And if we can't demand due process for somebody else, how can we expect it for ourselves? How can we expect anybody else to come to our aid if we're not helping the people that are suffering right now? All right. Hey, now that we are halfway through, I want to talk to you guys about the Rock Pot. Again, we're an affiliate of Rock Pot, and if you want to help the channel, go get yourself a Rock Pot. The link is in the description below. Okay, the Rock Pot, if you don't know what it is, it's a revolutionary portable slow cooking appliance. And basically the way it works is you heat a rock, stick it in the bottom of the crock, put the pan or the pot with your food inside of it, close it up. It's insulated, and it'll cook just like a slow cooker. You can take this thing anywhere. We have used it off-grid. We've used it at home. It is extremely versatile. And you can help out the channel by clicking on the link below and using the code, what is it, Grumpy Acres. You can get $10 off your purchase of a Rock Pot. All right. Elevate your cooking with the revolutionary Rock Pot. Okay. Now, let's get back to the regularly scheduled program. Where are we? We need to be right there. All right. Let's go to the Sixth Amendment. Sixth Amendment is the right to a fair trial. Kind of goes hand in hand with the Fifth Amendment. So our responsibilities are to expose and oppose sham trials, biased juries, or denial of fair legal representation. This is where jury nullification comes in. I'm a huge advocate of jury nullification. If you don't know what that is, it's when the jury can decide that despite the evidence shown by the prosecutor, the jury can decide that the person is not guilty. And if the government prosecutor has stepped way over the line, this is a perfectly viable thing to do, and you should not feel bad if you're on a jury and you can talk everybody into doing this if the government is overreached. Okay. The next one, to support efforts to provide legal aid to those prosecuted for resisting tyranny. Now, this is a this is a this is one that people can interpret very loosely. The current vice president, who will be out of a job as of tomorrow, if you're watching this in the rerun, it's January 19th. She was in charge, or not in charge, but she was assisting in raising money to bail out protesters that had taken over a police station and were rioting and destroying personal property. Now, the left was using these riots as one of the excuses was they were fighting a tyrannical government. Yeah, that was a reach if you look at it realistically. So we need to make sure whenever we're supporting these efforts that we're not supporting people that don't deserve our support. Okay. All right, let's go to number 7, the 7th Amendment. Boom. Oh, I hit one too many. All right. Oh, that's the 9th Amendment. I don't want the 9th Amendment. We need to get back to the 7th Amendment. Oh. Hang on a second, guys. Slideshow from the start. I just ran to the end of the. Come on. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay, let's get to the 7th Amendment. All right, there we go. Hey, Starla, how you doing? Okay, 7th Amendment, the right to a jury trial in civil cases. First responsibility, to demand the preservation of impartial civil justice systems, resisting government attempts to undermine fair trials. Man, this is a big one. This is a big one because this is when the government starts to bite back. The federal government, if you are charged with a federal crime, they have something like a 98% conviction rate because they do several things. Number one, they don't bring a case forward unless they absolutely know that they've got it, or they have a way to coerce the person into pleading guilty when they're not guilty. All right. So we need to be involved with the court systems. One thing that I am have not done a good job of my adult life is knowing the judges in the legal systems where I live. In fact, my standard operating procedure when voting for judges is every single judge should be voted out of office if they're up for re-election. All right. I figure that way we can get rid of the bad ones if they're in there. All right. I understand it's using a sledgehammer to drive a nail, but it works. All right. The next one, to participate in civil trials where possible to ensure justice and fairness for the oppressed. Now, I'm on jury. I was summoned to jury duty this month. I forgot to call in the first week, but I've been checking in every week since then. I'm a firm believer we as citizens have to partake in civil trials when we're asked to by the government. Because what happens is, as an example, I was on a jury one time, and it was a drug case, and the guy was obviously guilty. All right, he was a scumbag, and it was pretty obvious that he was guilty. But there's the problem. Because he was obviously guilty, the government prosecutor did a terrible job. He was extremely lazy. In fact, the judge had to say something to him about it. He was extremely lazy in presenting the case, and I made a point of it whenever we went to deliberation, that the guy had not done a good job of presenting the case, and everybody except for me was gonna convict this guy because he was a scumbag. But the government didn't do its job. So we sat down, we talked about it, and finally I got them to work through what was said during the trial, and what they needed to ask questions about. They asked some questions, they got clarification, and we were able to decide on the case. But what's to say that the prosecutor isn't ramrodding somebody? We've seen the left in this country introduce lawfare, so we need to be actively involved in these trials when possible, so that we can act as a check against government overreach. All right. Hey, Brian. Next one is the 8th Amendment. Protection against cruel and unusual punishment. All right. This goes back to the J6ers as an example. All right. Think about that and their plight when we're talking about this. First responsibility: to oppose and expose government-imposed cruel punishments or excessive penalties as tools of oppression. Like I said, somebody sitting in solitary confinement for 3 years without being charged, yeah, that's not a good thing. That is oppression 101. All right. Next one: to advocate for humane treatment, even for those labeled as enemies of the regime. It's one of the reasons. I don't know if the Abu Ghraib prison scandal back during the Gulf War, early 2000s. We had a bunch of army people treating terrorists in a manner that was unacceptable. And if we can't protect the people in the system that deserve it, then how are we going to protect our own selves whenever it's turned against us, right? So we need to make a habit of doing that now, and practicing it and flexing our muscles that way, so that when it comes our turn to be in the bullseye of the government, we can fight back. All right. Hey, Haas. All right. You guys are coming in late, man. You missed all the good stuff. I told everybody a big secret earlier. You're gonna have to go back and rewatch the entire show. I didn't reveal any secrets. I'm just trying to get you guys to go back and rewatch it. All right. The 9th Amendment: rights not enumerated are retained by the people. This is a big one. This is one that there are powers that be in our government that say the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, is a handicap in governing. Well, yeah, it's supposed to be a handicap. So they try taking all these. They invent these rights, and they try taking these rights away from the states and the individuals. All right. Brian says, YouTube blocked my first comment in this stream. I've been here for a while, and I apologize. I'm not over on the YouTube channel, so I can't moderate it. All right, let's talk about the rights under tyranny, or our responsibilities. I'm sorry, our responsibilities under tyranny. First one: to assert and exercise unenumerated rights, demonstrating that freedom cannot be wholly extinguished by governmental decree. When the government tells us that something is illegal and it's not morally, and that's an oppressive, tyrannical decree, we need to exercise those rights, and we need to show the government that they cannot take it away from us. Again, it might be a great personal risk, but we have to be brave enough and courageous enough to do this if need be. And the next one is to inspire others to reclaim suppressed rights through courage and determination. All right, this is one of the reasons why we have these conversations here. We're trying to inspire people to reclaim their liberties, is what we're trying to do. And sometimes we run afoul. We run afoul of the powers that be at YouTube, and we get blocked out. But beyond that, if social media and YouTube went away, then we would just have to do it in person. We would have to get up there and rally support. Oh, excuse me. Rally support for these rights that have been suppressed. Okay, so if you got to go out and protest in the streets, then you got to do that. All right. 10th and final amendment. I don't know where we're going from here. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. All right. The 10th Amendment, states' rights and powers. Okay. Side note. States' rights. States are not individuals, and in my book, I have a hard time saying states' rights. It's actually state sovereignty and power. All right, because rights are the manifest of the people, not the state. All right, but that's semantics. You guys understand what they mean whenever they say states' rights. So we've got communication. All right. Responsibility under tyranny, to advocate for local and state autonomy as counterbalance to federal overreach. Simple fact is, the political decisions that are made at your county courthouse or at City Hall are going to directly affect your life more than the politics in Washington, D.C. All right? We should always be trying to push everything to the lowest political level in the country as possible. Now, when the government starts passing laws that take away sovereignty from local and state governments, then we need to start pushing for it more. Yeah, he's trying to take sovereignty away from all the local governments there in the state, and by extension, the people. All right, because the local government's nothing more than a reflection of the people. All right. The next responsibility, to support decentralized governance structures that resist tyranny, tyrannical consolidation of power. I started thinking about this. One. All right, this responsibility right here points directly to starting undergrounds. It was the Revolutionary War was started by people that were working in abeyance of the royal decree. The Sons of Liberty were an illegal organization. They were an underground. You know what? Maybe I started a series on another platform about undergrounds and the history of them and the concepts. So maybe I'll break that out and put it on YouTube. I don't know. Well, I'll think about that. But this one is, we decentralize governance by starting, and you can call it parallel governments, parallel governance, or do whatever you want. But it's an organization that is directly competing with the centralized power. All right. Again, I'm not advocating that. All I'm saying is it's our responsibility if the government becomes so oppressive that we cannot function in a free and fair manner, then we have a responsibility to start something in opposition to the government. All right. Let's see. Is there another? I don't remember if there's another slide or not. Nope, that's it. Okay. Let me get out of there. Well, that's about it. That's about it. Short and sweet. There wasn't a lot there. Um, there's some examples. Let's go. I wrote some examples down here that we could use that fit the bill. All right. So the First Amendment, the fit the bill of tyranny. I wanted to show some of the oppression that the U.S. government had done. All right. So the First Amendment. There was a thing back in the mid 50s through the early 70s called Coin COINTELPRO, and it's when the FBI targeted activists and organizations like Martin Luther King Jr. and the Black Panther Party using surveillance, harassment, and disinformation to suppress free speech and assembly. Now, you guys probably heard about that at one point. Second Amendment, Gun Control Act of 1968. This law imposed sweeping restrictions on gun ownership, including bans on certain groups and registration requirements. The Gun Control Act of 1968, even though they have upheld it, is not conducive to freedom and liberty. All right. Yeah, exactly. If you're cold, go get some hot chocolate. My beverage tonight is from a small brewery in Del Norte, Colorado. If you're ever in the San Luis Valley in southern Colorado and you have a chance to go to Del Norte, there's a brewery there called Three Barrel Brewery. And if you like dark beer, they make a delicious one called Burnt Toast beer, or Burnt Toast Ale, I'm sorry. And it's a fantastic brew. All right, let's talk about the Third Amendment, the protection against courting soldiers. Now, I was not able to find anything directly related to this in modern times. One example that did come up was during Hurricane Katrina. The National Guard and law enforcement commandeered private property without consent. That raised concerns about property rights. So there's that. Fourth Amendment. This is a good one. I mentioned this one. The Patriot Act. It allows the government to conduct warrantless surveillance and collect metadata of everybody. Right now, your rights and my rights are being violated because everything that we're talking about, or I'm talking about on this video, is being swept up by some intelligence agency. Right. The Fifth Amendment, right to due process. Now, J6 is a great example, but I wanted to reach back a little bit further in history. From 1942 to 1945, the Japanese Americans were put into internment camps by Executive Order 9066 from President Delano Roosevelt, the darling of the left. Hey, Rosie. So, and these overreaches always seem to come from a certain segment of the political spectrum. All right, they seem to really enjoy abrogating people's rights. Sixth Amendment, right to a fair trial. Like I said, January 6 prisoners. This example. I was trying to get. I was using ChatGPT to format my presentation, and ChatGPT, whenever I did this list and did it, it was changing the example to one where a conservative, Trump and Reagan specifically, were doing things against leftists. J6, I had to educate Chat GPT in the J6 and how it pertained. It saw nothing wrong with what was going on until we had a conversation. Again, this is one of the reasons why we need to be involved with these things learning. All right. But needless to say, the J6 people have been denied a speedy trial. Okay, Seventh Amendment, the right to jury by civil case. Again, the federal civil asset forfeiture laws. And if you don't know what those are, property is seized under civil forfeiture laws without a warrant, without a right to jury trial, and it's forfeit. And most people never get their stuff back. And they will use the excuse, if you're carrying a large amount of cash, they will take it because it's suspicious. Okay, the Eighth Amendment. I told you about the Abu Ghraib prison. Again, U.S. personnel, and it really gave the country a black eye. All right. The Ninth Amendment. This example. I found this one, and this example is kind of scary because people are talking about it now. During the 20th century, the United States government and state governments ran forced sterilization programs where basically government-sponsored eugenics, forcibly sterilizing thousands of individuals, including women of color and people with mental health issues that were deemed unfit. The unenumerated right of bodily autonomy and reproductive freedom is it was violated. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why I'm sitting here in front of you today, because, I took a stand and I paid the price for my bodily autonomy with the pokey pokes. So this is something, and they're going to do it again. They're planning on doing this again. So we need to be very, very watchful. Okay, and the next one, states' rights and powers, and I Chat GPT pulled this one up, and I agree with it 100%. The example of the unenumerated powers, federal marijuana prohibitions, and it's ongoing. It started in the 1930s, and it's ongoing now. Despite many states legalizing marijuana for medical and recreational use, federal law under the Controlled Substances Act continues to criminalize it. In Colorado, as an example, they legalized it. There are guys walking around with duffel bags full of cash, growers, because they cannot put it into the system because it's illegal. And it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that it's a Schedule 1 drug. Seriously. It's something else. And I'm not sitting here, I'm not advocating. I do not do marijuana. I don't smoke marijuana. In fact, I don't even take THC gummies. I tried them. I don't even do that. So I'm not advocating it, but it just boggles my mind that marijuana is still a Schedule 1 drug, right? Okay, well that's it for the examples, and that's it for the presentation. You guys got any questions or comments before we go? It was short and sweet, and like I said, I realized that I was competing with much bigger channels, and I'm competing against the NFL tonight. So I appreciate everybody showing up. Seriously, this one. Oh, look at that, Brian. Brian's happy it's over. Look at that. He's happy. Seriously, we need to think. We need to be cognizant of our responsibilities to the rights granted to us by God and enumerated in the Bill of Rights. But we also need to understand that those rights change. All right, we cannot. It's not our defense of freedom and liberty is not a static affair. It's always something that we have to look at, and it's going to change over time. And response to the circumstances. Okay. So I want you guys to go out there and think about what we said. I'm going to put the source material for part 1 and part 2 in the community link, so you guys can download them in Word format if you want to, and you can look at them that way and become more familiar with them. You can share them with other people. In fact, I would hope that you share them with them. A thought occurred to me when I was getting ready for this. If you guys have any content ideas that you want me to discuss, put it down in the chat of one of the videos and say, hey, here's an idea for some content. I try to look at all the conversations. I'm sorry, not in chat, but in the comments after this is over. But I try to look at all the comments, and I try to reply to all of them. So yeah, if you guys got anything specific you want me to talk about, please feel free to suggest it. All right. I run the risk of doing stuff that I think is interesting versus what is actually interesting to other people and necessary. Yeah, feels like I got a bug or something. Anyway, until next time, guys. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. If you're not a subscriber, again, go ahead and think about subscribing. If you want to help the channel, hit the affiliate links down below. All right, the stuff down there will help you become more self-sufficient, more independent, and more free. All right. Brian wants more about the survival bunny. You got to talk to Yoda about that. Go there. Go Thursday night to the Ladies Night Live and ask her about the survival bunny and when she's gonna do one. Okay, so just ask her about it. With that said, when you lay your head on the pillow tomorrow, you should be better off than you were when you woke up, and go out and live a life done free. All right, guys, take care.
Attention, families and preppers alike. Don't miss out. Jace Medical's biggest sale ever is happening right now. From now through January 31st, take 10% off your order when you purchase a Jace case or kid case. That's right, your ultimate solution for emergency preparedness, now for less. Use code NEWYEAR at checkout and take the first step toward peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Don't wait. This offer ends January 31st. Visit jacemedical.com today and save big with code NEWYEAR.